Every dad has these emotions on the regular basis. Nobody wants me. Nobody cares. I'm taken for granted. Nobody knows how hard I'm pushing to drive everything forward. All of those emotions were just like rising to the surface.
Brothers, welcome. Welcome to today's episode of the Pour to Purpose podcast. I'm your co-host, Matthew Sinkovitz, coming to you live here today with my co-host, Yeadon Smith. Yeadon, welcome, brother. Honored to have you with us today.
What's up, dude? Good to be here, as always.
Hello, sir. Coming back to the table today to talk everybody's favorite conversation, Pour to Purpose.
That's right. That's right. The love-hate relationship with
So we got a juicy one coming up here today, Yeadon. I believe talking about something in reference to putting the detective hat on. You were sharing a little bit about a recent story, recent situation that occurred on Friday.
Hang on. Let me get my detective hat.
He's putting his detective hat on now, folks. So let's buckle in.
There we go.
Yes.
So there I was, the dark alley. No, man, on Friday this past week, I was on one of our coaching calls with one of our brothers, and I had this real aha moment in my own recovery journey. Let me give some backstory before I share the bing light bulb that happened. So the month of October was pretty hectic for me. I had two major events going on during that month, 2 5-day weekends back to back. The first weekend was with my 2 older boys in Austin, Texas at the Formula One Grand Prix race. Went out there Thursday through Monday. Got back from that, working Monday afternoon, Tuesday, Wednesday, dad, father, husband, business, all the things. Thursday, got back on a plane, flew to Tennessee. And I talked a little bit on the last podcast about like getting back on track with my eating habits after that event. But that was another 5-day event, Thursday through Monday, got back late Monday afternoon. 10 days of traveling out of 12. From Thursday to Monday and then Thursday to Monday again. 10 days out of the month. A lot of traveling for me in October, very unusual. And when I got back from the Tennessee trip, I was in it. I was in the uncomfortable emotions. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, just kind of having this pity party for myself, where I was feeling disconnected from my wife, my kids. I was this massive sense of disconnect, uncomfortable emotions going on, the classics that every guy goes through. Every dad has these emotions on the regular basis. Nobody wants me. Nobody cares. I'm taken for granted. Nobody knows how hard I'm pushing to drive everything forward. All of those emotions were just like rising to the surface. The story in my head, the DJ was spinning the record, the volume was cranked to 11. And I was doing all of my habits, all of my daily habits, my core 4, reading, journaling, exercise, meditation, trying to get recentered, trying to navigate all of these really uncomfortable emotions. But being honest, it wasn't working that well. I was still struggling. Didn't want to show up. Didn't want to do everything that I know I need to do, right? And not like with recovery, but I didn't want to show up for my family. I was really having a hard time showing up for my wife, showing up for my kids, showing up in business, just all of these chaotic emotions that I was sitting in, kind of stuck. And on Friday, on the call with one of the brothers who's going through the Liberation Bootcamp program, one of our weekly calls, And on these calls, we have a system that we follow on these calls. We start off with a breathwork exercise, kind of this physiological reset to engage. I can never remember whether it's the sympathetic or parasympathetic, but whichever one is the good one, that's the one we engage with the breathwork. And then on these calls, on these weekly calls, we recite the Noble Code, which is one of the core pillars of the Liberation Bootcamp. These 15 principles that we live by. Like, I take full accountability for my life. I take full responsibility for my life and all of my actions. How I do anything is how I do everything. If I stray from the path, I vow to return. This is just 3 principles out of 15. I'm not going to recite the whole thing right now, but we say it out loud on these calls. And after we did the breath work and the breathing exercise, it's barely 5 minutes long. It's really cool how it works. Kind of forces, hyperoxygenates your body, physiological force. It's like pushing like old school. I know you're old enough to remember, Matt, especially. I know I'm old enough to remember because this is how I got out of it all the time. When I'm on a computer doing something I'm not supposed to do, I hear my dad's steps coming up the stairs, hit the reset button on the computer. Blink, it just reboots it just like that. Bing! Like, I was just here starting up the computer, Dad. Nothing going on. Right. You know what I'm talking about. Listener out there, if you're over the age of 40, you know what I'm talking about. Computers these days, they don't have that magic reset button on them anymore. But the breath exercise, it's like that reset button for my physiological, my nervous system. It just forces my physiologic to pause and reset. So finished the breathing exercise, finished reciting the Noble Code, and it was like this shift happened where I became aware of these puzzle pieces that I had just clicked into the puzzle that I didn't even know were missing. It's like I'm looking at this puzzle and I'm like, something's like, I don't know what's or maybe it's like, you remember those picture books where you kind of like fuzz your focus and then suddenly there's a 3D object that appears. You know, Magic Eye, I think, is the brand from back in the day. If you're listening and not old enough to remember that, look it up online. Magic Eye, pretty cool thing. You kind of mid-focus your eyes and suddenly this 3D picture appears where there wasn't one before. It's just like, bing, in focus. And I realized, and I shared this on the call with the brother who's on the call with me. And she was like, man, I got to share this with you because I just had this kind of epiphany where I realized that the breath work and recite the practice of saying out loud the Noble Code were 2 pieces of recovery practice that I had not had for over 2 weeks. Because when I was traveling, I wasn't able to be on the Friday call or the Saturday call. I was able to be on the Wednesday call, but the Wednesday call is a compressed call. We don't normally do breath work or recite the Noble Code on those calls. And I realized I had missed these 2 pieces of my recovery framework for over 2 weeks. And as soon as I did them, I was like, oh, wow. This emotional shift, this mental shift. The record was still, the DJ was still playing the record, but it just turned into background noise. The uncomfortable emotions, they were still there, but they were way off in the distance instead of right up in my face. And I had this epiphany moment, like had my detective hat on. I didn't even have my detective hat on. I just had my regular hat on the call. Just had my regular hat on, but somehow I was able to recognize like, oh my gosh, these 2 pieces, I hadn't realized how valuable they are for my recovery framework.
I love that, Yeadon. As I'm listening to you, we've touched on this a little bit throughout the week, and I've heard you reflect on it. And as I hear you share, like what I'm hearing is like these two pieces of our framework, which is a regular part of our framework. It almost sounds as though as it served as like a reset to the nervous system, or like a centering or grounding or regulating of the nervous system. It's like almost like there. It sounds like almost there was like a physiological reset, a centering of sorts, an anchoring of sorts is kind of what I'm hearing. I think about my work that I do in the Buddhist tradition, where we have regular liturgy. And whatever faith tradition you may come from, you'll see these acts of liturgy, and some people just see them as a nice thing that we do, and we go through the motions in our faith tradition. But I've come to see liturgy as actually a physical symbolism of what's going on for us psychologically, or like a physical representation of what's going on for us psychically or psychologically. So, just like the same way whenever we, step up to the altar, for instance, in our faith practice, or, take communion, there's a psychological symbolism that's occurring there. So I can't help but wonder, like, these physical acts of the breathing and the recitation, I'm sensing that there's some sort of psychological core.
I think you hit one of the nails right on the head, because I actually had the thought, and I talked about it with my wife that evening. I was just kind of walking through this kind of aha moment I had, and thought about the faith tradition that we were raised in. We were raised in the Episcopal Church, where very liturgical, where every Sunday, as a community, we're reciting the Lord's Prayer, the Nicene Creed, the prayers of the people. We actually tried to recite the Nicene Creed from memory, just the two of us, and I think we got 90% of it. But if I were in a congregation Sunday morning at local Episcopal or Anglican church, like, bro, just rev up the chainsaw, let's go. I can recite it with the best of them without missing a beat. And that liturgical aspect of reminding myself who I am, what I am aspiring to become, the man that I am in truth, living by these 15 principles, really has become who I am over the past several years. And I've taken it on more as an identity. Mm. And what my takeaway from this moment was realizing just how much my defensive framework had degraded, had eroded over several weeks, because I was missing these. I didn't even realize that these pieces were critical support of my defensive framework.
Yeah.
I know that the core four are critical pieces, and it's rare now these days that I miss one of them. I'm really have a pretty rock solid commitment to making sure that I hit all of my core four on a daily basis, even if I have to compress it and just journal one sentence, or read my book for 1 minute, or do 10 push-ups for my exercise instead of like a 15-minute walk. My core four, I know, are like inviolable pieces. I cannot skip those. But I hadn't identified the noble code and the breathwork as critical pieces in my framework. Because, we talk about porn as it's not a porn problem, it's a pain problem. As a dad, as a man, the emotional pressure of life never stops. It never stops. Shoot, every time I go check the mail, I clench up just a little bit. It's like, what bad news is in the mail today? And it's like, it's all junk. Phew, okay. Survived another day, no legal notices, no delinquent taxes on a real estate property, no anything, right? The pressure of 4 children, where like real pressure, real talk. Just today, I asked my son, my 18-year-old son, said, hey man, he's sitting at the kitchen table, doing something on his phone. And I asked him, like, hey man, what did the job offer call yesterday? He was supposed to get a call yesterday from this company he's interviewed with to work at a car wash. And his response was, I'm filling out the paperwork right now, Dad. What do you think I'm doing? I'm like, does that mean you got the job? Like, yes. I'm like, were you going to tell me? No. You were just going to go to work on Monday and just like be gone? Just like, that's how I was going to find out? You're just at work without giving me a heads up? That does not feel good as a dad when I've been trying to work with him for weeks to help him figure this stuff out without putting too much pressure on him. I don't want to be the overbearing jerk that's trying to control his life. But all that to say, the emotional punches never stop. They never stop. And with recovery from porn, it's not about me. If there's a reset, if there's a relapse, if I stray from the path, it's never because I'm a bad person. It's because somewhere my framework failed. The pressure from life pushes on the framework nonstop. It finds a weak spot and then it just starts to come in. And I realized how eroded my defense structure was when after the breath work and after the noble code, I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel like my framework just got fortified with titanium, right? It's like you're playing one of those online games, like upgrade your armor. Yes. Armor plus 10, whatever. And that really meant a lot. It was another piece of the puzzle in making sure that my framework is solid. And now I know, okay, I can't just take breath work or noble code as it comes. I have to be intentional and make sure that even if I'm traveling on a weekend and can't be on our call, can't be on the main call, it's like, all right, I can't be on the call this weekend, but I am going to incorporate breath work and saying out loud the noble code as reinforcement of my defensive structure.
I love that, man. Excellent, excellent. I heard you mention the pressure of life kind of mounting up, piling up, and then at some point it just finds its way in. And I think I hear that, and my little tweak on that, as I might see it, would be the pressure of, because we talk about it being a pain problem, right?
Yes.
The pressure of life, these emotional punches, boom, boom, boom. To me, it's more of like an internal game. The pressure builds up from within. The pressure builds up from within. The pressure builds up from within. And if we're lacking some critical piece of our core 4 framework, we're lacking community, we're lacking the pieces of the puzzle that might come through the noble code or the breath work. It's like at some point it's going to find its way out, And,
I love that, man. I love that.
Yes.
Exactly
So to me,
right.
just a little bit of an inverse on that idea. And that's why all these pieces of the puzzle, as we have organized them as part of the recovery framework, the freedom framework that we work with here, are so critical, because it helps to address and to put that healing balm on all the stuff that's going on internally, so it doesn't have to find some crack to force its way out and blow the lid off.
Talking about like defensive framework and that emotional pressure building and building. Last week, I was feeling the pressure. I was feeling the pressure several times last week. I could feel the pull, sitting at my computer, sitting on my phone. I'm just like, oh man, I want to go find inner circle activity.
Yeah.
I could feel the pull. I want to act out. I want to reach for the pain pill of porn somewhere.
Yeah.
Maintain my sobriety, but that inner pressure was very powerful. And with all my devices, I have software and filtering on all my devices, even though I can get around them. They're just kind of, I don't even know why I have them, because I can get around them. But even so, having a plan to deal with the pressure, whether it's exercising the core four, using the core four, using the 4-rack formula in real time, doing a breathwork exercise, going for a walk, something.
Checking it in.
Yeah, checking it in. I do that on the Voxer chat with the community often. Like, guys, I'm feeling the pull right now.
Yeah.
And letting those emotions dissipate.
Yeah.
Funny story about no defensive framework, not to do with porn. So this past weekend was Halloween. Friday was Halloween. My kids went trick-or-treating. They came home. Everybody has a bunch of candy. My son, William, didn't get any candy. So it's like, you don't have any candy to give to me? Like the dad tax of candy. And I knew what I was doing. And I did it anyway. You ever been there? Like, if you're listening out there, you know what I'm talking about when it comes to like porn use. You know what you're doing and you do it anyway. It's like, if I put myself in the situation, I will use porn. But I mean, like, kind of accidental, but it was not an accident. You knew what was going on. So Saturday morning, I went to the grocery store. You're like, Saturday morning grocery store? What's wrong with that? Well, it's the day after Halloween. And guess what is on a 70% discount the day after Halloween? Halloween candy. You can buy a $10 bag of Halloween candy for $3. And I was feeling this lack of Halloween candy in my life. And I knew if I go to the grocery store, there's going to be Halloween candy everywhere for super cheap. I'll buy a bag and I'll get my Halloween fix. And sure enough, shopping carts full of Halloween candy at massive markdown. I bought 3 bags. The Tootsie Roll flavor chews. Those are the only good ones. I'm not a fan of the chocolate Tootsie Roll. Unpopular opinion. I got Kit Kat Reese's bag and then Kit Kat Reese's Almond Joy Hershey milk chocolate bag. Dude, all 3 bags gone by Sunday night. All 3 bags gone by Sunday night. And the crazy thing is, I knew what I was doing and I did it anyway. Because I didn't have any defensive structure around my eating habits for that weekend. I was like, And I think about that with porn and being hyper aware of my defensive structure around pornography. Because eating 3 bags of candy in a weekend is like, bro, that's not good. That's not good for you. But that's not going to derail my life. I'm not putting my family at risk with that. Now, if it's an every weekend thing, yeah, that's going to be a big problem. And I'm not saying once a year porn binge is okay. That's not what I'm saying. Hear me very clearly out there, listener, right? Don't dabble with porn. But I didn't really think about my defensive structure, my defensive framework around my eating habits for that weekend. And I went crazy. And with porn, I'm way more aware of what the risk is. So I'm way more aware of making sure that my fortification, my framework is solid. And I'm really grateful this past Friday that I had this aha moment where it's like, oh, okay. These are two more tools in my tool belt for maintaining my defensive structure, maintaining my awareness, maintaining my recovery, and holding fast to my sobriety. The breath work and the noble code liturgy, the liturgy of the noble code, if you will.
I love that, man. I got to draw as we put on our detective hats.
Let's go.
I do find it interesting, and everybody who listens to this podcast on a regular basis knows my journey with food is active. And what I often find is, for me, as I'm navigating that internal pressure and I've decided porn's not going to be the option, oftentimes for me, it'll be food as the secondary. I'll binge on something else, and it gives me a bit of a high. It gives me a bit of a sedation. It helps me check out of it. It kind of gives me the euphoria. I binge on something else. So it is interesting. I think it is interesting. All the pressure you speak of over the past couple of weeks, Yeadon, and then a weekend of candy binge. Like, it's kind of like, maybe that pressure found its way out just in a less harmful way. It is interesting that a binge occurred nonetheless, but just in the form of sugar and sweets.
My blood sugar would disagree that it was less harmful.
Fair enough. That's what I'm saying. Food's a slow killer. Porn's like a fire that'll burn up everything, but food is no less deadly, man. It's just a little bit slower.
Food is no less deadly. Food is no less deadly. Yeah, man. The listener out there, the takeaway that I want you to take away from this conversation is, wherever you are in your recovery journey, keep your detective hat on. Do whatever it takes to notice what's going on in your life, to be able to identify what's missing. And I'll tell you, if you don't have a group of men that you can talk through this stuff with, it is almost, I don't want to say almost, I want to say it is impossible. Somebody in the comments is going to say, actually, it's, let's be real. You cannot do this work in isolation. You can't do this work by yourself because you can't see it. You can't see it because it's your own stuff. You need someone on the outside to be able to ask questions without judgment, without fear, without shame, to help you identify, like, oh, I never would have been able to figure out, oh, I'm missing the breathwork and the noble code on my own. It took being in a community where that was a practice. It's like, oh, if I didn't have any calls that I was on, I never would have made that connection. I mean, maybe I would have, but I doubt it. So if you're out there, brother, and you haven't found a safe community to connect with around this recovery journey, man, honestly, that's really what I hope you take away with this. 1, keep your detective hat on. And 2, plug into a community where you can bring this to the table and they can help you identify where you started stepping off the path. I can see now, like, if I stray from the path I vow to return, I didn't reset my tracker, but I strayed from the path. And straying from the path happened like 3 weeks ago when I missed my first call. I missed the call that weekend. I was traveling. I couldn't be on the call. I was at a race circuit in the middle of the day, thousands of people around. There's no logistical way I could be on the call. And I thought, okay, I'm okay. I'll still keep pedaling my bike. But it's like something mechanically was off. I was pedaling, but it wasn't working. Mm-hmm. And then again, I kind of was path adjacent. And I just was getting a little bit farther away every time I missed the call because I wasn't using these tools that were part of my weekly routine, part of my regular weekly cadence. And it wasn't until I got back into the calls like, oh my gosh, these are the pieces I've been missing. And it was like right back on the path.
Yep.
Right back on the path.
So I'll say it, brothers, if you don't have a community where you can show up and check in and do this work and be supported and plug into a framework, we'd love to invite you today to head on over to porntopurpose.com where you can learn more about what we're up to as a community. You can learn more about the Liberation Bootcamp, the same program that Yeadon and myself went to years ago to lay the foundation for this work and the path that we are still on and continue to practice every day. So head on over to porntopurpose.com and we'd love to connect with you and have a conversation.
That's my story. I'm sticking to it.
Yeadon, great share, brother. Thanks for bringing the insights to the call, brother. Super helpful and a new aspect of the conversation. This is the first time we really touched on this one. I really like it. Thank you.
Well, man, these things just keep happening in my life.
Yeah.
And whatever happens in whatever part of my story that serves, that's because bro, if you're out there, if you got kids, you got a family, you got a wife, there's a lot at stake.
Yep.
There's a lot at stake for you as a dad.
Yep. Love you, brothers. Thank you so much for joining. Yeadon, thanks for sharing. Thanks for being here. Brothers, wherever you are in the world, we love and appreciate you. Look, Yeadon's got his hearts. Peace and power, brothers.
Noble men.
Bye-bye.